There we go. Got everything up. Perfect. So yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great right now.
Awesome. So do you want to introduce yourself a bit, and then we'll get into like the main part of like the interview and everything like that.
Yeah, sure. I am the one who created the transmaxxing Discord
Mm.
and the subreddit too. And I also written about many political topics that usually these texts do not get that much attention, but it's not just the transmaxing thing I am focusing on.
Okay. What else are you focusing on at the moment?
The, the most recent thing was, for example, the abortion issue, which I
Mm.
actually kind of figured out what will be the best policy earlier.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to the transmaxing, I've read through the manifesto a few times here. It makes some quite interesting points. So generally, my whole aim of my channel, or my whole channel base, is pretty much based around like the black pill and incels, I guess you could say. So what are your general views on like the black pill incel stuff like that?
My view is that it is a bit flawed, this black pill views incels have. I do not think it lines up perfectly with our current science. I think some of it is ideologically warped to fit the incel ideology. For example, I think incels often over-focus on looks and they do not focus enough on social status, and how many incels could actually ascend in various ways. It can be either like becoming financially successful or moving to some other location.
Mm.
So I do not really buy into the narrative that the incels are doomed and have to give up or rope or something like that.
Okay, yeah. So if you were to have like, do you think as a percentage of the population, what percent of people do you think it's possible for them to ascend? So what percentage of the population do you think would be able to get um a girlfriend, a wife, a partner, whatever it may be?
Of the total population, I
Yeah, of
think
the total.
it's almost everyone.
Mm.
Like it's just that for some people they have the odds against them, so it's unlikely that they will succeed, of course. And this
Mhm.
is not just about looks, it can be about some people not being very smart and being in their bad social circumstances. Maybe they do not have any money, do not have like support from family. I think that is also important. Like
Mhm.
if you,
Okay. Okay, sure. But if it was to let's say like you would have like a very unattractive man, let's say like a 3 out of 10 man or something like that, even if he was to maximize his status, he was to go to another country, so on, stuff like that, people would still say that the love which he is experiencing from these women is because of his money rather than himself. Do you get what I mean? It's almost like a gold digger situation. That's what a lot of or beta bucks, which is a common term a lot of black pillars incels use. So what do you think about that? Do you think like they'll be able to find true real love, or is it just kind of like a facade or vacuous?
when I think about it, I think it's a mix between the two. I think in many cases, if you have like money and status, I think some females will just be attracted to that and not love you. But they also think that if you have like more money, more status, I think females will view you as more attractive too and maybe genuinely love you because you have this success and power and all that. I think.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So going back to transmaxing, so when you how many different versions of the what is it, a man, what would I call this, the document, how many different versions of the are there now?
Now there are six versions.
Okay, so With I think I'm on version. I think I have version 5, but I'll just go from this one. That one's fine. So, what made you think about the idea of transmaxing? Like, what popped into your head when you were like, and made you write about this?
Uh, the original motivation was
Mm.
that I was thinking about like how to make society strong and competitive,
Okay.
and how to do selective breeding for humans. And
Mm.
then there was the question of what to do with excess males. For example, if there might be, I think you might agree with that, that there are some males who are not really suitable for becoming a biological parent of a child with custody and all that.
Mm.
So you actually want to have some males be rejected. And what I was thinking about was to find a solution for them that allow them to still live good lives. Because there is not really, it's not about like being cruel to them or like I do not believe that because a male is born ugly or unattractive that he should like be punished just for that. We have to like find a solution for all of these people to still live good lives.
Mm.
And this was the original motivation for transmaxing.
Okay. Um, when it comes to people living good lives, do you not think that there would be an option or maybe like a different route which we could go down where, for example, society as a whole is like more accepting, or I guess you could say less competitive, or is able to, or is willing to have like a less competitive output of offspring, so the less attractive or like lower genetic value men are able to compete? Do you think that would be like a valid solution, or do you think transmaxing is kind of like the most logical conclusion which we can go down?
I mean, these are not the only two options. I, of course, do not believe that you are entitled to reproduce and to, like, if you have like a homeless male who has alcohol problems and cannot handle money, then I do not think you should have children. And
Mm.
then females rejecting that individual is actually a good thing for society.
Mm.
So I do not think males being rejected has to be a bad thing. I think it can be good. But when it comes to alternatives to that, there are various options. There are like pornography. There is prostitution, which is not always legal. I think it should be more acceptable, both socially and legally. And this, I believe, can be a solution for some people. It's not really ideal, of course, because it's not really much companionship. It's only temporary. So
Mm.
it's not really a great option to go for, but I do think it should be accepted as a solution. And of course, you need to ensure there is not an issue with sexually transmitted diseases and all that. That might be an issue with prostitution, so you have to make sure there's no issues with it, but in theory it should be a decent solution for many people.
Mm.
Some people, like if you're attracted to males, you might be able to get a male partner. That's not also not viable for most people. Some people might not really be okay with never having a girlfriend. I also do not think that's really viable. And then people can try to like ascend or whatever, but that's kind of a zero-sum game, because if one male is successful, it will be come at the expense of someone else. Because if I like get someone else's girlfriend, that male will be without her. So males competing harder is not really a systemic solution. So no, I do not really see any great alternative to it for
Mm.
incels. Unfortunately, what I did discover later was that it really was something most incels really was interested in. And later, when I started the subreddit, because originally it was just I think a part of my text that didn't get that much attention. But
Okay.
later, when I started the subreddit and my Discord channels, transmaxing was more about like another approach to transitioning, so I actually moved away from the incel to stacy thing because I didn't get enough tractions among incels. Most are actually very transphobic and
Yeah.
are totally against it. So I do not think most incels are going to go for that route, but for some
Mhm.
people it might work, I think.
Yeah, I think generally is quite a big. It's a shift to your whole identity, I suppose. So it would be quite a slim amount of people who would be willing to go through it. But I would say that speaking to a few incels, just like in my comment section here or there, I've seen that there has been how would you say uh, an e-boy maxing sort of phenomena, which is almost like a pseudo version of it because they've seen a lot of the people who watch my channel. They've heard a lot about ideas like the female gaze, and obviously a lot of them are on TikTok because of their age. They're normally between like 25 at the like higher range, and then maybe like 18, probably younger than that, probably like 16 at like the lowest age. So a lot of them on TikTok, obviously, and then they see these e-boys getting loads of traction. A lot of people like them, wherever it may be, even though they might not have the traditional masculine characteristics. Women still like them. So these guys who are incels will try and become like these e-boys, become almost more feminine, I guess you could say, or like enact more of these like feminine traits. Also, like at the more extreme end, I've only spoken to one person about this who was somewhat serious about it. Was going from incel to femboy maxing, which was an interesting topic. Which is, I assume, like one step down, I guess, from full on trans maxing. But he said he got some quite good experience from that as well. So I think at the end of the day, for a lot of people, it depends on, first of all, like what kind of incel they are, like how they're built, how masculine they are, their height, their frame, so on, and their mentality towards it. But so, what do you think about people doing like lower levels of trans maxing, like e-boy maxing or femboy maxing, wherever it may be?
I do not believe in femboy maxing. I do not
Okay.
think becoming a femboy will be beneficial for your dating prospects. I think you need to do a full transition to female, or at least like not like literally full transition, but you need to like transition far enough so you pass as a female socially to really get benefits from it.
Mm.
And this actually poses a big issue besides the mentality, and this is that in order to transition well, typically you need to start before you are maybe 20. It's between maybe 17 and 21, depending on like your facial traits. And
Mm.
if you're any older than that, you will have a really hard time transitioning well with our current medical options. And like even if you try to get like facial surgery, like if you actually see the results, you notice that most doctors will not actually do enough changes, so you will still look like masculine and even after the surgery. So even if you like have money to pay a surgeon, which many incels do not have, you still might not able to pass as a female if you start too late. And this, I
Mm.
believe, is actually the biggest issue right now with transitioning, is that you have a limited age span where you can turn out really well and cute, but after that, which is most of the population, you're not really able to become like a cute girl or anything like that. You
Mm.
most will end up not passing and might end up having to still present as male, and then they will not get the same benefits from it.
Mm. So why generally do you have a disbelief? Why is it like a hard cutoff? Because I've seen, this is only my personal experience. I've seen people like on TikTok and places like that, for example, being quite like amiable, quite kind to these sort of like femboy types because they'll somewhat present as female, even though they have some male characteristics, and other males might still find that somewhat appealing. So, do you think there's like no hope, or it's a completely like fruitless endeavor, or do you think there's some sort of advantages which could be gleaned from becoming or femboy maxing?
I personally do not have any faith in femboy maxing. It seems like
Mm.
nonsense to me.
Mm.
That's not to say that it cannot work out for some people, but it's not just something I cannot believe in right now. And I think sure you will have like 1 in 100 who it works out decently for, but I think most fanboys do not like have a good dating life or anything like that.
Mm.
I think the fanboy thing is popular because if you have like gender dysphoria but are not willing to do a full transition, then becoming a fanboy might be more appealing. Maybe you do not want to have like take HRT because it might have negative effects you do not are not willing to face. So for that reason, I think the fanboy thing is popular. You're not because people are not willing to transition all the way to being a female, or might not even be able to pass. And this is, I think, the main appeal with being non-binary or femboy and all that. I do not
Mm.
really think it's beneficial, really, unless you have like gender dysphoria to deal with.
Okay. Yeah, I can understand that. So when it comes to people going on and then full transitioning, so you said the ideal age was up to 21. At 21, that's like the max range where you'll become passable.
That's not
So,
quite correct. Some people are able to pass after that. It's just that for most people they are not able to. But some people are actually lucky. They might have the facial features that all of them to pass even after that, and then they can transition really late, like at 50 or 40, and still pass as a female. But this is a
okay,
small minority.
yeah. So, what would you say for the people over that age who are unable to pass? What would be the second best option for them, in your opinion?
Not really been able to figure out any good option for them.
Mm.
If I had like a good solution, I will present it. Sure, you can suggest something, I can comment on it. Like you can try like career maxing, you can try like building wealth, you can try
Mm.
maybe video games, can try as a cope. So there are various ways to cope with it. Maybe get a hobby or something, maybe rock climbing or whatever.
Mm.
Something that like gives you like maybe some fun, but in terms of like dating, I think do not really have any great options. I think for some people like an escort or something might work. I personally do not like that. I will never pay for a prostitute myself, of course.
Yeah.
So it's kind of awkward to recommend it to others because I do not really believe in it for myself with my values. But the
Mm.
thing is, you shouldn't project too much because other people have different priorities.
Mm. So, let's say, for example, we would have like an anecdote from like a young guy. He's an incel, so he's an incel like by mentality or like a mental cell, you might call it. So, because of he might have like autism or whatever it might be, and because of those sorts of issues, he can never really get around dating or anything like that. But he's fairly young, and if he was to transition, he would be in a fairly good spot, but he doesn't really like the idea of transitioning. He doesn't really feel that much of an inclination to transition or anything like that. Would you encourage him to transition, or would you just kind of say that he should just keep on going as he's going, and kind of like hope for the best? What would you say in that
I
situation?
mean, what I will say about this mental cell thing is that I am very skeptical about the whole thing with mental illness and disorders. I
Mm.
think it cannot accurately be diagnosed. So even if you have like an diagnosis of some mental illness, it doesn't really prove to me that he is unable to become functional in society.
Mm.
And I do not believe that social skills is innate to like your brain and mental abilities. I do not think social intelligence is a legitimate concept. I believe that mental abilities are other things and that social skills is something you can learn and be good at even if you have like initial difficulties with that. And of course I believe that you might have various mental issues that will make social interactions more difficult. like you might not be able to pay attention to like facial cues or whatever, but I think the whole concept also about social skills is not really legitimate. Yeah, I'm not sure if you have studied social exchange theory. The thing is, if you have like something of quality to offer, then you're not really in a need that much social skills because other people will seek you anyway. Like for example, if you are a really attractive female, then of
Mm.
course males will want you, like even if you cannot speak at all.
Yeah.
So, but if you are not attracted, then you can try to rely on social skills to like trying to sell yourself to other people, even though it's not really in their interest to give you a chance in the first place.
Mm.
But then people have an incentive to just reject you and ignore you. And if you take, for example, Tinder and other social recent dating, you cannot
Mm.
even chat to people unless they first approve of you. So I
Mm.
believe dating is going in the direction where it's more harder and harder to even get into contact with a female unless you get that initial approval from her. So, but of course, being skilled at social interactions can help, but I will not like sell it too much. I think it's overvalued. I
Mm.
think it's much more important, for example, if you're able to build a business or something like that, able to make good decisions in your life. I think that's much more important than being skilled at social interactions and get what you want from people. I wouldn't really rely too much on that. So no, I will not recommend a transition based on him either by being himself as autistic or a diagnosis. And I will need to know more like is he successful at school? Might he be able to like build a business or something, and then if he do not transition, he might be able to still become successful as a male in society.
Mm. Okay, sure. So when it comes to transitioning, obviously it is a very big step. So this might be more anecdotal data than raw statistics. But from your experience, have you seen people who transition to have a very successful dating life? I know you wrote about this in your in your doc here, but if you could just go into some detail about that.
I mean, from what I have seen, it's not really a big problem trans females are having if they become like attractive. They will not really have issues with dating.
Mm.
Like there was a fairly attractive trans female and she claimed that like she couldn't find a good male partner or whatever. And I wrote to her that I didn't buy into it and that she could find someone if she wanted to. Then later on she like posted, I think she changed the profile picture and showed like had a picture with her girlfriend, so maybe she just didn't really want to like get a male partner.
Okay.
But from like what I've seen so far, it's not really like a big issue. Like just finding a partner as a trans female, it's not really like something people have issues with. I think it might be some older transitioners like who cannot pass at all who have troubles mostly.
Okay. So another question linked onto that for people who transitions go from male to female and then still want to date females. Have you what's the success rate which you've seen when it comes to that, or is that a valid strategy or like an invalid strategy?
The thing is, I have hardly any data regarding that. The
Okay.
thing is, a lot of people, from what I've seen, actually like dating other trans females because they can relate more to them.
Yeah.
So they might not even pursue like cis females seriously. But it's hard to tell. Like I had one person who told me that, and this was a late transitioner, that she was able to often date couples. So
Okay.
she could still like has still improved her dating options when it comes to even these females. But it's really hard to get data because a lot of trans females actually like dating other trans females, and then you cannot really draw any conclusions. It's hard to tell if they could attract the cis female if they wanted to. From
Mm.
what I have seen, there are among the lesbian community there are like some transphobic groups there who are very hateful about trans lesbians, but there are also those who are in between or are supportive. So it's really hard to tell, and some are not even, some are might be bisexual or even heterosexual and still willing to date a trans female.
Okay, sure. So another question, which is sort of related to those two, would be how do you think that polyamory and stuff like that, generally, not just talking about people who transition, how would you see that fitting into the dating landscape as we go on and go forward? Do you think that will become a bigger part? And if you do, like, what are the reasons behind why you would think that?
I mean, I believe that this is a natural progression that, for example, historically, a lot of societies, especially in nature, have been polygamous, where one male has maybe two wives, and this has been kind of very common historically, like in more older societies before, like Christianity and all that. So I believe we are just going back to that historical norm. And now we call it polyamory, like before it was called polygamy. And it might be polyamory is like more politically correct because it pretends to be like all about equality, but in practice it will still be that it allows high volume males to get more partners, while
Mm.
low volume males end up with nothing.
Okay, so okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think that, to be honest, it will become a fairly big part of societies as a whole as women see more and more men as being less and less desirable. They'll want to inherently, in my opinion, sort of almost flock around like these super high value guys, because these super high value guys, for a lot of them now, are somewhat accessible because of them being able to go to them physically, the introduction of like dating apps and stuff like that. So about dating apps, what do you think? Do you think overall they've had like a positive or negative impact on the dating market and stuff like that?
I think there are issues with dating apps. For one, I think the issue is that most of the initial interactions is not about like when you talk to other people. It's instead like via text, it isn't the same thing, so it doesn't really tell you if you're going to get along when you meet for in real life. This
Mm,
is one issue. Another issue with dating apps is that it's very dependent on what types of picture you're able to take. So if
mm,
you like take 5 pictures of you, you might have one year where you look good and another where you look terrible. And it's hard to judge people just based on picture and know how good they look, so there are issues with it. I also think there are positives, like for example, you are easier able to find someone who actually are attracted to you, and you do not waste time with people who already have a partner, because if you're like going to like talk to strangers
mm,
somewhere like a day game, you're going to run in a lot of people who already have boyfriends and they will not be interested, or they might
mm.
not find you attractive. But with dating apps you can like do a systematically where you go more without the ones who are actually interested in you, so it might be beneficial that way. I think it's detrimental for low volume males in general for in society.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be like a pretty common view. I think most people, not just in the incel or black people community, but as a whole, think the dating apps has made dating a lot easier for the people who are fairly attractive and generally easier for women. But for the vast majority of men, I think it's made dating extremely difficult. So, those were the main questions which I was really interested about. But what do you think about the generalized stigma about transitioning or transmaxing? Do you think that will eventually go away as time goes on, or do you think that will kind of be a staple and be like a big sticking point with people?
What I believe is that the reason why trans in particular are being attacked so hard by conservatives is that they see that they are losing and they are panicking because of that, because we see what happened with gay marriage and by acceptance of homosexuality. And this is the same thing repeating itself, that it goes from not being accepted by society to being like something that people accept. And I think there will always be like issues and like questions and like, for example, with sports, what rules should be there, and with bathroom and all that. So there will always be this contentious issue and try to like figure out what the best approach is. I think the issue is that a lot of people who are like very vocal about this are not really interested in like finding solutions. I think a lot of conservatives are like trying to sabotage it instead. They are not really looking for like trying to find some ways or some compromise. They are just looking to like harm trans people as much as they can because they are like political enemies of them.
Okay. So going on from that point, I sent you the video yesterday on the future generalized future of women. So what did you think about that video from watching it? And then we'll go on and have some
Yeah,
questions
I
about that.
did have some issues with it. The first and most obvious issue is that while like you might be able to like replace females in some ways, but not really a replacement, it's more like an alternative. Like
Mm,
instead of having these physical females, you have like these cartoon characters with motion captures or whatever. And
mm,
of course that will like have popularity, and it might be like more popular new because it's a novel thing. But I will believe that there will always be a desire for physical females.
mm,
And I do not believe like sex robots is a viable option, or sex doll I think is a bad option. It's not nearly the same as actually having physical sex with a female. I think it's much better to like have a real girlfriend than to have a sex doll or some sex robot or something.
mm. Well, this would be more for the people who either don't want to like deal with the whole like pursual aspect of it, and they just want to like get it done, or people who actively have been rejected a lot of times and now they kind of don't want to put themselves out again. I feel like um those alternatives would be better for those kinds of people. I think that there will always be a place for women, obviously, but I think that a lot of men are diverging and going into different ways, different strategies in order to sort of get their fill or get what they desire.
I mean, personally, I think like a better option is something like prostitution or whatever, or you go to a massage salon or something like that. And you
Mm,
like very low volume may like pay for like getting some companionship once a week or something like that, and then you have professionals satisfying them. I think that's a better, more realistic approach for most males. I do not think sex dolls or things like that are viable replacements.
okay, sure. All right,
And
those are. Hmm?
and the other issue I had with the video was that you claimed that the females did not use things like makeup for themselves. And I actually sent you a study showing that the females are actually turned on by being sexy, they actually turned on by themselves. And this would explain why they do these things like wearing revealing clothing when they already have a boyfriend. They do not want people to hit on them anyway, or like do makeup that doesn't even make them more attractive. Like, I do think they will not assume they are doing that to attract like males or something like that.
Okay, sure. I assume that a lot of the time it would be hard to differentiate between the two. I guess it would be a bad idea on both sides to make like a deterministic sort of assumption about why they're doing whatever they're doing, I suppose.
Yeah,
there's always a bit of like nuance to it. Maybe like it's a combination of multiple different factors oftentimes. So I think that's probably the best way to look at it. I was probably a bit too deterministic in my video when I
yeah.
described that. To be fair, yeah. Mm. So that's really all the questions which I had for you. Is there anything else which you want to bring up in particular?
I mean, there are a lot of things you can talk about, like either political stuff or things about transitioning.
Mm.
But if you want, we can do that as a second recording, or you can
Mm.
ask me anything you are interested in right now.
Yeah, I mean, those were just the main points I wanted to talk about. Obviously, we could talk about the political stuff a bit later, but I just really wanted to like touch base on a few points where transmaxing and transitioning sort of intersects with inceldom and the black pill and so on, like stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like we've covered quite a bit of that.
Yeah, I can say one final thing about
Hmm.
transmaxing is that increasingly lately I view it as a better approach to transitioning in general,
Mm.
because the mainstream trans narrative is very focused on gender identity, and I
Mm.
believe that is a big mistake and the wrong direction, and may have caused like anti-trans sentiment among large part of the population, because I think this is the wrong focus. I think what we should focus on is the which medical treatment people actually benefit from. So you have a more evidence-based scientific approach to this. And I do not believe that gender identity is innate. I believe that it is to a large extent environmental, to the extent people even have gender identities.
Okay.
It's so hard for me to like tell like how other people think about their identity, but it does not seem like sex characteristics and that is even that important for people's identities. I
Mm.
believe that the reasons for people not transitioning is that there are a lot of hurdles to that, a lot of difficulties you will have to face, like for example, you have built up like your friends and all that, and then you suddenly have to interact as a female. You might be afraid of what other people will think about you, and you might be afraid of discrimination,
Mm.
and you have to like get the right medication, the right surgery, and all that. So people will be unwilling to take all these risks, and also there is the fertility issue with transitioning, that even if you bank sperm prior to starting hormones, you might still not be as practical to have children, because then you need to like travel to that location where the sperm are to actually like inseminate your girlfriend,
Mm.
and that might be harder than if you're just male and like get a wife. So there are like practical issues with transitioning that are keeping people away from it, and also I believe there are negative misconceptions. For example, people think that there is like a suicide epidemic among trans people, which isn't the case if you look at actual mortality. It has actually gone down lately.
Okay. Well,
So
as. Mm.
yeah, it's still higher than the average for the population, but this is like before controlling for example, it's much more common for trans people to be diagnosed with mental illness, and so they all have all these issues prior to transitioning, and it might not solve all that.
Okay. Sure. I mean, I would. I think that the biggest problem, honestly, above the logistical issues like actually being able to transition, being passable and stuff like that, is the sort of socio-cultural sort of issues. The idea that gender is socially constructed as an interesting, or how did you phrase it? Because that's not exactly what you said. I don't want to misphrase you.
Yeah, I do not think gender is like some arbitrary social construct. I
Mm.
believe that gender norms are to a large extent biological,
Mm.
and I believe that, for example, all of social interactions are a product of biology. For for example, males having to compete for females and the males being disposable.
Mm.
Like, for example, if there is a war, you want to send your males to defend the females, for example. I believe that this is a biological result of biology rather than some arbitrary social construct. And also, like, males and females have a different interest naturally. Like, females are more interested in careers like becoming a doctor or nurse or daycare or teacher. At least like teaching children, while males are more interested in like going to war or engineering or things like that.
Mm. Okay, yeah. I think taking all of that into account, I think for a lot of people, they would not be able to like deal with the societal backlash which they would have from transitioning, even if they were to be fine with it. But I think a lot of people, especially in like the incel and black pill community, a lot of the people who, in your opinion, would be have better lives from transmaxing aren't for it for like different ideological reasons, I guess you could say. And that will probably be like the biggest sticking point. I'm sure you already know that. That will probably be the biggest sticking point which you're going to have completely not even thinking about the success rate and anything like that. If the success rate was 100%, there would still be like a lot of people who would have inbuilt almost disdain for the idea. So I think that would be an extremely big problem, and it is an extremely big problem if you want to push this message. So I think that's all I really wanted to discuss here.
Yeah, I have
Uh,
like two things to respond here. For one, I
mm,
think that a lot of social issues can be mitigated in various strategies. For example, you might decide to start first with medical transition, and then once you're able to pass, maybe you have like facial surgery, then you switch and present as a female, and then if you move to another area, you might be able to restart your life as a female, and the people will not know you were born male.
mm,
But with regard to incels and their ideology, I do not know exactly what they think, but from what I understand, I think many incels are very much against doing anything that goes against reproducing. So if they fear or even like accepting the rule in society, so I believe that incels, if they transition, that's like caving to society almost. Like,
mm,
take for example, if you have like a Falun Gong practitioner or something like that, and then you like try to force that individual to change their religion, that individual might not be willing to do that even if you subject him or her to torture,
mm,
because he or she is stuck in that mental framework and do not want to cave to society. I don't feel like it's wrong to like do that because of social issues. I feel like they shouldn't be able to shouldn't have to do that. So
mm.
they are really stubborn, and I can kind of understand it too. Uh,
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I get that. Um, yeah, I think that is about it. Unless you have any other closing points which you want to bring up.
yeah, I don't really have anything about transmaxing right now. Did you want to discuss politics, or should we end it right here and maybe do it later if you want?
Yeah, we could discuss politics later. I think it'll be for the best to kind of keep those two separate, and then once we discuss like the politics one, I'll put that in like a more of a politics related video, because how I like to do it, I like to have videos, and then from my videos I get like ideas from talking to people, then I put in the interviews. And right now I'm doing a video on general like femboys, e-boys and females in the black pill. So that's sort of what I'm doing right now. Like I'm going to do an interview with somebody, a female who thinks that who pretty much goes into black pill servers and then tries to de-radicalize, I guess you would say, or try and turn incels into non-incels by changing their mentality. So I'm kind of trying to keep it to like this a very specific sort of bracket of
Yeah,
discussion for the moment.
yeah, I
Yeah.
understand. And of course, I do not think she will be very successful, but good luck to hear that.
Mm. Yeah, from speaking to her, she hasn't had too much success doing it. But I mean, she just keeps on keeping on. Like eventually, maybe something will happen, and she's quite happy to talk because it's almost like she gets like a wider audience of people to almost do the incel, which maybe something will happen from it if you're able to be convinced by somebody just talking to you a bit more about it. Then the likelihood is that you wouldn't have gone like too far down the rabbit hole. You'll be like fairly close to the entrance, I guess you would say. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. That's why I wanted to have the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, then we end it now, so end the recording right now.